Well, welcome everybody to the summit as well as to the power of social entrepreneurship in fighting human trafficking. Yay! Okay, so this is going to be a super duper informal, just like conversation basically, talking about human trafficking, about how businesses can get involved in fighting it, about all of our businesses. And yeah, so if you have questions, feel free, raise your hand. But we're just gonna go and get started. So I'm Caitlin. I am one of the lead founders of Prem-maa, yay, Prem-maa International, as well as founder and owner of 11 Day Clay, and I'm currently a student studying business marketing, so that's fun.
Hi, my name is Allison. I'm a first-year student at Washington University in St. Louis, so it is in St. Louis, not in Washington State. I'm studying international development, global health, and social entrepreneurship, so this topic is definitely near and dear to my heart. And I am the founder of Prem-maa International.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Marissa Miranda, and I am the co-owner of the Little Red Door in downtown Turlock. Also, we have a smaller location over in Santa Cruz, and my sister Isabella also owns the business with me. And we are so, so proud to be partnered with Prem-maa, who also sells their products in our store.
Yeah, so like Caitlin was saying, we really do want this to be as informal as possible, just having a conversation with all of you, giving you a little bit of background about, again, our businesses and what we're doing, but then also giving you a few practical tips of how to fight human trafficking, right? Because this is this huge industry. It seems pretty impossible to actually make a difference, but we're here to show you and maybe give you a little bit of resources to actually feel like you're making some kind of difference. So that being said, if you guys have any questions, we'll have a time at the end to answer questions, but if you have a question in the middle of the presentation or just our conversation, feel free to ask it. Again, super informal. There's not many of you, so even though we are up here with a microphone, it really is just a conversation. So I'll just jump right into it. So I first heard about the human trafficking industry when I was in 6th grade. And I had been told my entire life that slavery had been abolished in 1865 with the 13th Amendment. But as we all know, that's a lie. And finding out that, in fact, slavery was still present, but still more prevalent than at any given point in history, astounded me. And really did shock me. And just this time it takes a different form and goes by a different name, which is human trafficking. So I first came to learn about the human trafficking industry through my dad. Him and my oldest brother went to Nepal in 2015 and worked with Love Justice International. Just found out more about human trafficking. We'll talk about Love Justice in a little bit too. But found out about human trafficking, worked with, visited the organization and really saw what they were doing. And so they came back and started telling me these stories. And I was really affected by the stories that they would tell, and really struck by how different their experiences were seeing human trafficking, with how different that was from the narrative I'd been told my entire life, that slavery was abolished and it wasn't a problem anymore. So I wanted to keep learning about this issue, right? Because it's this huge, monumental shift in my worldview. So I started watching documentaries, reading various literature about the industry, just to find out as much as I could about human trafficking. So in learning about human trafficking, I learned that the girls, the people who were being trafficked, the main people who were being targeted were actually my age. I was 11 at the time when I found out about the industry. And I don't really know how to express the shock and just disgust I felt. I don't know if you've ever experienced something or learned something about the world that completely changed how you view the world. But that was definitely a moment where I was I don't know what to do. It really, really changed my worldview. So I knew that if I was born into like a different situation, different country, maybe a different family, that it could have been me who was trafficked. And so like I couldn't just sit with the information I was given. That's not my personality. So I decided that I was going to do something. But as an 11-year-old, right, even like thinking of how you're going to stop this multi-billion-dollar industry, second largest criminal enterprise in the world, seemed pretty impossible, right? 11 years old with like very limited financial resources. Obviously, I'm under the control of my parents, so I couldn't really do anything with that. But I kind of came to this realization that I didn't really need to stop human trafficking around the world single-handedly. I just needed to try to do whatever I could to fight the industry, and I just had to be okay with whatever that resulted in. So with great help from my parents and a lot of prayer, I had the idea to start an online retailing business called Prem-maa International. And Prem-maa is a Nepali word that means loved. Oh, if you could go back one slide, sorry. So Prem-maa provides jobs for the marginalized people of Nepal through purchasing products from fair trade and ethical manufacturing companies, and we donate 100% of the profits to Love Justice International. So I would have hoped that everyone would have known by Love Justice by now. Our main speaker, our keynote speaker, it was actually supposed to be someone from Love Justice, but unfortunately his plane had some technical issues and he is stuck in Texas right now. So unfortunately, you didn't get to learn about Love Justice. Agape International Missions is a great organization, but I'm going to be telling you a little bit more about Love Justice. So Love Justice is a non-governmental organization based in Kathmandu, Nepal, and it works in 24 different countries across Asia and Africa, including Nepal, Bangladesh, India, South Africa, Zimbabwe, Namibia, Mozambique, and like so many more. And Love Justice uses a really unique approach to fighting human trafficking. They kind of have like a three-pronged approach, and I'll go into a little depth about that. But the main way that they fight human trafficking is through what's called border transit monitoring stations. So essentially what they do is they find these high traffic borders, so like India and Bangladesh, or like Nepal and India, or even like airports in South Africa. And they'll kind of monitor these like high trafficked borders. And if they see anything suspicious, so if a girl it's like wearing new clothing or looks confused or has like a different answer than the man that she's traveling with, they'll like kind of pull them over, discuss, or question them a little bit farther. And then if they think that she's being trafficked, they'll tell her about what's going on. And then they have a whole kind of transition process back into the village or wherever she came from. So that's kind of their main way of fighting human trafficking. And through these transit monitoring stations, they've actually been able to intercept over 28,000 individuals since 2006, which is incredible, right? But another way that Love Justice fights human trafficking is through arresting traffickers. And they've actually arrested over 1,100 suspects that they've been able to arrest in connection with their trafficking work. And then finally, the last way that Love Justice fights human trafficking is by establishing family homes in some of the poorest parts of the world. And they care for orphaned and abandoned children. So they have 17 different homes and care for over 200 children in these homes. And I was actually able to visit some of the homes that they have, and absolutely incredible. I don't know if you guys have ever been to an orphanage, but there's usually this kind of like sense of desperation or just like sadness. That was not what these homes are. They're so full of life. And they really are a family. And so it's just like this most like so incredible to hear or to watch everyone like have so much joy and life in these like really pretty terrible circumstances. And so, yeah, they have 17 homes that care for over 200 children, and they also operate a school in a city called Pokhara in Nepal. So I remember really clearly the day my dad and I came up with the idea of Prem-maa, and we were like sitting on the couch talking about human trafficking, and I was like, oh, why don't we like purchase products from Nepal and sell them in the United States and then donate the profits to an organization that fights human trafficking? So my dad and I looked up a few ethical manufacturing companies in Nepal, and then met with some missionaries from Love Justice to make sure that these organizations were legitimate, that like the idea was like even something that we could do, and if it would be helpful to the organization. And this family was called the Watts, and they were so enthusiastic about what we were doing. And they actually like knew all of the manufacturing companies we were looking at partnering with, which I think is just such a sign from God that like we were supposed to do this. So then my family and I, in 2017, we traveled to Nepal to visit these ethical manufacturing companies to make sure that what they were doing was what they were saying they were doing. And we were absolutely blown away by everything that these organizations were doing and how they cared for the workers they employed. So we purchased around $500 worth of products, and we've been selling ever since. And I should have mentioned this a long time ago, but I keep saying we because it's couldn't have done it alone. Definitely my parents were instrumental in the process of starting Prem-maa, but also Caitlin has been with me from the very beginning. And then we have another business partner. Her name's Holly DeYoung, and she also has been with us from the beginning. And they've been so instrumental to the formation and development of Prem-maa. So in the 5 years that we've been a business, we've raised over $40,000 and donated $10,000 to Love Justice. Yeah. So unfortunately, because of COVID, we had like a period of like a year and a half which is like a lot of the parts of our business, but we had a period of like a year and a half where we had to change our business model, because what we do is we go into houses, educate people about human trafficking, and then sell our products. But because of COVID, we couldn't do that. So we were lucky enough to partner with Mrs. Miranda and the Little Red Door, and that's been really instrumental to our success and our continued success. And Mrs. Miranda will talk about her organization in a little bit. But I wanted to turn to specifically talking about social entrepreneurship and how it can be a vehicle for social change. So I read this book in 8th grade called Half the Sky, and it talked a lot about it's an amazing book. I would definitely recommend it. Not really for anyone not in high school, because it's like pretty graphic and really heartbreaking, but it shares stories about kind of the injustices committed against women around the world. But it doesn't just like share these injustices, it also shares ways that women and organizations have kind of helped women overcome these injustices. And one of the ways that they've done this is through social entrepreneurship. So I didn't know what the term social entrepreneur meant when I started my business. All that I knew was that I was using business as an avenue to promote good in our world. And while I didn't really know what social entrepreneurship was at the time, Half the Sky really did show me how powerful it can be and how it can be utilized to affect really good social change. So for those of you who don't know what social entrepreneurship is like me at that time, it's essentially a term used to describe a business that uses business to promote social change or good in their community or around the world. And this is exactly what Prem-maa does, and our partners as well. So social entrepreneurship is really powerful because it utilizes our capitalistic society in which we function to enact change. So if you think about all of the different humanitarian or development organizations in the world, there's a very limited amount of funding that they have to draw from in order to fund their efforts. So they can try to compete for government funding, which is an extremely complicated, small amount of funding that they can draw from. They can obtain grants from these really big humanitarian groups like the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, but they're also highly competitive, so competitive, and everyone wants to get them. Or they can solicit donations from ordinary citizens, and this is what a lot of our organizations do. But these types of organizations are at the whims of others' goodwill, which is pretty dangerous, right? Because sometimes funding's going to fluctuate, and they can't ensure that they will have enough funding for the next year. And you have to depend on the goodwill and humanity of others which is not something we can count on all the time, unfortunately. But with social entrepreneurship, we provide consumers with products and services that they want. And then we can either, and this generates funds that we can either reinvest in the business and continue to grow it, or we can allocate it to another part, or somewhere else, or another initiative. So I'll give you kind of a non-human trafficking example of the power of social entrepreneurship, because I really love using this story because it's so, it just shows how powerful social entrepreneurship is. But there's this couple whose name is Shelley and Corrigan Clay, and they're social entrepreneurs in Haiti. So Haiti is a country that's home to over 30,000 orphans and a country of just over 11 million people. So this is a lot of orphans for the amount or the population that's in the country. So feeling called to provide for Haiti's numerous orphans, the Clays traveled to Haiti with the intention of adopting a child and starting an orphanage of their own. When they arrived in Port-au-Prince, the Clays began to realize that the root of Haiti's orphans crisis was not just that there were a lot of orphans, but there were children who had parents that sent them to these orphanages. So in many developing countries, parents take their children to orphanages because they can't afford to provide for them. And so as a result of a lack of employment opportunities, 80% of Haitian children in institutional care actually do have living parents. So they're not orphans in the traditional sense, but they are in orphanages because their parents can't provide for them. So to target the root of the issues, the Clays started Papillon Enterprise, which is a social entrepreneurship business that makes artisanal goods and employs hundreds of individuals from the slums of Haiti. And this business has eliminated the need for unnecessary adoptions and has helped care for over 750 children through the jobs they provided. And it really shows how social enterprises actually eliminate the need for continuous financial resources and actually provide jobs and opportunities for marginalized populations. So although Prem-maa is a nonprofit organization and it actually donates its profits to another organization, this is not exactly how most social entrepreneurship businesses work, but the organizations we do work with, the manufacturing companies, are incredible examples of social enterprises. So the companies we work with are for-profit, and they do make money and operate like a normal business, but they're committed to promoting positive outcomes for their workers. So for example, our manufacturers pay double the average Nepali living wage. They provide healthcare and scholarships for the workers and their children. This is unheard of in Nepal. And they do so much more to just care for their workers and make sure that they have positive outcomes. This is not something most businesses do, especially in developing countries. So by purchasing products from ethical manufacturers, we're able to provide quality jobs for the people of Nepal, and this gives them opportunities to be self-sufficient and limit the need to turn to other industries like human trafficking. And so another example of how these organizations really do affect positive change in the communities they work in is if these companies are looking to hire someone new, they'll employ them based on need and not on skill. So if, again, if they're looking for someone to work in their company, someone can come who really needs a job, and someone else can come with this list of qualifications, and they'll usually employ the person who really needs the job. And so this really shows that, or it limits an individual's need to turn to exploitive industries. And this is important because although our partners could be making a greater product, improving their efficiency by hiring skilled workers or paying only the average or minimum wage, they don't, because they want better outcomes for their workers and they want to promote social change in their communities. So because Prem-maa works with social enterprises in Nepal and is itself a social enterprise, we're able to fight human trafficking from both sides. So this means we're providing people with a livable wage and skills which will limit their need to turn to trafficking. And we're also generating revenue that allows us to fund an organization that fights human trafficking that also depends on these donations to operate. So really we're using capitalism as a vehicle for social change. So now we're gonna turn it over to Caitlin and Mrs. Miranda. We're gonna talk about their own experiences in social entrepreneurship.
Okay, hello everyone. The reason she calls me Mrs. Miranda is because I was her teacher. And so a lot of my students who graduate get stuck on that. Even though I say, you can call me Marissa, they still Mrs. Miranda, which I still call my math teacher Mrs. Dominic, so I totally get it. And I graduated like 20 years ago. Okay, so I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about the Little Red Door and how we tie in to Prem-maa. So when my sister and I started our business back in 2019, which the Little Red Door is all about, we're known as the Sister Thrifters, and we really believe in conscious consumerism and sustainable shopping and pre-loved items out there that are really well made, and there's no reason we have to keep buying brand new. So along our thrifting journey, one of the things that stood out to us is a lot of the thrift shops, they donate to some sort of charity of some sort. And whether it's the Humane Society, you know, it's something local, something national. We always thought that was really nice. However, you know, donating to a nonprofit or a charity can be used very loosely. And it makes you wonder, okay, what charity are you donating to? Are they local? That kind of thing. So we knew for sure when choosing a nonprofit or a charity, we wanted it to be local, and we wanted to have a face and a name of someone we knew and could meet and connect with. So at the time, when I was teaching at Turlock Christian, I kept hearing about Prem-maa, and I don't believe I was a teacher of theirs yet. But I kept hearing about Prem-maa, so I reached out to the girls and I said, hey, you know, can you guys meet with me? And I'd like to know a little bit more about your nonprofit. And so after meeting with them, I was just blown away, first of all, of the facts of human trafficking. At the time, I think I was very naive in thinking it was only overseas. I didn't realize it was in the United States, let alone California, let alone in our community. And having 3 girls myself, it really blew my mind. And I thought, wow, first of all, this is scary and something needs to be done. What can I do, obviously? And then at the same time, these girls, knowing specifically Allison in junior high, was so moved to make a difference. And I have a 12-year-old myself, and I just thought, wow, how powerful is that she, you know, felt called to make a difference and make a change. And she did, and she's doing it. And their professionalism blew me away. And just all of it was really great. Another thing I really liked about the organization is their values aligned a lot with ours in terms of ethical working practices, things that were being made, upcycled with the saris, being upcycled into those really cute scrunchies and bags. And a lot of their products were sustainably made as well with organic cottons and beeswax. And so all that's, you know, gonna not hurt our planet, which is a big deal. And that's why we're big thrifters. So it just made sense. I truly feel like the Lord put us together and it happened the way it needed to happen. And so by having them in the Little Red Door, it gave them another platform to get their items out there and get their name out there and word out there and start talking about human trafficking a little more normalized. Because even for me, I feel like it was kind of a taboo topic that people didn't really talk about. And I think, you know, only a couple of years ago, maybe a year ago, it like hit social media and it was all over the place and everyone's trying to help with the human trafficking. And these girls had started that way before, along with other organizations, but just their age alone just really empowered us because we're young women in business and these are really young women in business coming up. And so partnering with them was a no-brainer. And it's been awesome giving us the opportunity too, with having them in our store. Myself as an owner, my employees, you know, they go to their section, their table, and they say, what is this? And we're like, let us tell you. And so people are blown away, and young girls that come in all the time and young men are inspired. They're inspired by their drive and their commitment and their age. And we put out there, it doesn't matter how old you are, you can make a change. And so we constantly say, your purchase is going to save a life, because it is true. And so we feel like as business owners, if every business took that opportunity to, you know, find an organization that really is going to make a change, find a charity, work with them all year round and not just for 1 month because you feel like you should. for the month of May, we're going to donate to X, Y, and Z. It should be all the time. Why are we only doing 1 month out of the year? It should be all the time. And those kinds of businesses are what's going to change the world. And I really, really am passionate about that. And I'm so honored to work with these girls. And I'm excited for what we have to come. And it's going to be a great journey.
And I really just do want to thank Mrs. Miranda for allowing us to have that platform. She has a store down in downtown Turlock, which is like prime real estate in Turlock. So giving up a whole section of her store really does allow us to continue fighting human trafficking even during this COVID season. And so, yeah, we've just been so blessed and honored to work with her. It's just amazing. And yeah, I could go on, but I'll stop and let Caitlin talk. Yay! Okay, so I'm Caitlin, as Allison said, and also I said. I am one of the founders of Prem-maa, so I have been involved since pretty much the very beginning. Been doing lots of marketing stuff, been doing lots of like product party stuff, lots of creative aspect things. Most of the promotional materials I've created in conjunction with like my mom and stuff like that. So very, very heavily involved. This has just been an amazing business to be able to travel and tell people about human trafficking. This has just been like absolutely insane. The amount of people that we've been able to talk to and help educate about the horrors of human trafficking and ways to stop it is just, it's amazing. It's totally amazing. So, actually a year and a half ago, I just felt the tug to start my own business called Love and Day Clay. And so I started it with the intention in mind of that it would be a for-profit business, but that I would donate 10% to go back into Prem-maa because I'm still heavily involved, just not as much to the extent that I was in, especially since all of us are like now in college, which is crazy. So a little bit less time, but so yeah, I just started donating to that. And when the new store in downtown Turlock, the new Little Red Door store came about a year and a half ago, exactly a year and a half ago, came in, I was like, Ms. Miranda, can I put stuff in your store, please? So I have some of my products in Little Red Door, along with the Prem-maa products are also there. So this is kind of just like all of us here together with products. So fun. But yeah, so it's been a really awesome journey of like learning more about human trafficking and how prevalent it is even in just our community, of like hearing from police officers, hearing from people who work hand in hand in counseling, of counseling these women who have been pulled out of it. It's more prevalent here than most people know. And even though it's not as crazy huge as it is in like Thailand and Cambodia and places across the world where parents are selling their children to be able to earn money to go grab a beer, it's still so prevalent here that I knew that we have to do something in any way that we possibly can to help stop it. So that was, yeah, that's one of the reasons why I'm involved. But yeah, so it's been an amazing past few years getting to work with these amazing women and promote products and promote product parties and everything like that. So that's a little bit about Love and Day Clay. Yeah, we'll get into a little bit about what you guys can do to help fight human trafficking. So these are a few ways that you guys can help. You guys being a relative term, pretty much everyone can do all of these things. So the first thing that you can do is educate, not only yourself, but also your friends. So one of these can be going to conferences, going to summits just like this, even if it's just for a day, learning about the industry, learning about all of the aspects about it so that you can be able to tell others about it and spread that awareness. Like Miss Miranda was talking about,
the awareness about human trafficking hasn't really gotten to its head fully, but over these past few years, it's been being a lot more like announced. It hasn't been as huge of a taboo topic as people have started talking about it, and that's how it needs to be. If it keeps being a taboo topic, then people are still going to be going under the wire, and that can't happen. They're humans. They're just like us. It could have been us. So being educated about these different ways, like through conferences and summits. The next one, through books. Like Allison was saying, Half the Sky and a book called Sold. All of these amazing opportunities to be able to learn more about it. As well as watching documentaries, like Allison said, of starting out. One of the first ways that you can start out is watching documentaries, trying to glean anything possible that you can learn about this. If you want to talk a little bit about that, you can.
Yeah, so also, if you guys want like a book list or a documentary list, like I've got you. I love documentaries and books. But like some really good documentaries would be like Nefarious, Merchant of Souls. We had a screening, I think it was 2 years ago, before COVID, of Nefarious. And it's just like an absolutely fantastic movie that really not only shows human trafficking from one country, but it goes all over around the world. Let me pull up some other ones. I have a bunch. I Am Jane Doe is a really, really interesting one. It's on Netflix that talks about human trafficking in America and kind of Backpage.com. I don't know if you've heard of that, but it was a really big hub for human trafficking. And that one's incredibly informative about human trafficking in America. The Untouchables is also a really good one, kind of more like a niche documentary, focusing on human trafficking in India and Nepal. Sold, if you don't want to read, there's also a movie based on the novel. The Traffickers is a really good documentary series if you're into more like TV series. That's also on Netflix. And then going back to human trafficking in America, learning there's a documentary on Netflix, Jeffrey Epstein, Filthy Rich. And that one's a really good insight into kind of the corruption that is in the American justice system when dealing with human trafficking. Yeah, if...
Sorry. So for those of you who are a little bit more sensitive to these kind of subjects like me, there is a movie called Priceless, which the creators of For King and Country, that band, they created it. And it's all about human trafficking, but it's a little bit less intense. Some of the movies and documentaries and books that Allison was talking about, they show what it's like in very brief detail. It's not anything crazy, but it is a little bit more intense. So if you want to watch it with like maybe a younger audience or do like an at-home kind of party thing, like a movie watch party, you like have popcorn and you watch a movie and then you talk about it afterwards, then watching something like Priceless might be a little bit better just because it is a little bit more tame while still having those conversation topics.
Okay, so ways you can help, so shopping small and ethical. So I want to just throw out a few facts you might not know about fast fashion right now and how it's affecting our planet. So the growing market for cheap items and new styles is taking a toll on the environment. And average people have bought about 60% more of garments in 2014 than they did in 2000. 85% of all textiles go to the dump each year. 85%. And washing some types of these clothes sends thousands of bits of plastic in the ocean. Clothing production has roughly doubled since the year 2000, which is amazing. And while people bought 60% more of their garments in 2014 than in 2000, they only kept about half of those items. So again, buying items that are made from Nepal, from Prem-maa, these are ethically made, and they're sustainable. They're gonna last. They're not gonna just be thrown away after a couple washes because they are falling apart because the fabrics are cheap. Some brands offer even more pollution, such as Zara, who puts out 24 collections per year. So Zara is a very popular brand under right now the younger teens, because you can buy a blouse for like $3, a dress for like $5, $6, but they don't last. They are cheap because they're cheaply made, and so it goes right back in to just being thrown away. A lot of this clothing ends up in the dump. The equivalent of one garbage truck full of clothes is burned or dumped in a landfill every second. That's disgusting, in my opinion. In total, up to 85% of textiles goes into the landfill each year, and that's enough to fill the Sydney Harbor annually. That's a problem. That's a huge problem. So buying ethically made, sustainable products is so important for our environment, for our world. Being good stewards, we are only given one planet. And so what are we going to do to conserve and save our planet? And how are ways that we can buy and purchase that are going to not affect that in a bad way? And buying small and buying items that are ethically made and changing lives is, to me, a no-brainer. And my hope and prayer in the next 10 years is that 90% of America's shops are pre-loved and pre-used, gently used, however you want to say it, shops that have items out there that are just recycled and recycled and recycled, and we can just keep buying that way instead of constantly making and reproducing this garbage that is honestly destroying our planet. So that is another way that you can help.
Yeah, and going along with that, Miss Miranda talked about like these clothes are cheap because they're cheaply made, and a lot of a big part of that is because a lot of labor trafficking is used in these kinds of industries, and they take advantage of people. And so fast fashion is directly correlated with human trafficking because they have to produce the goods some way, and usually it's through coercion of manipulation of workers. And so by stopping buying these like very cheaply made goods from Forever 21, H&M, even Nike, you really do make an impact in with your purchases.
Okay, and then the next one is give. So there are multiple ways that you can give, and one of them, as just a buyer, is by personally donating to organizations that fight human trafficking. There are a lot of organizations out there, some of them, most of them, you have to vet out, make sure that they are doing what they claim to be doing. All of the organizations that we have here today are vetted, they're amazing. So maybe add those to a list of like, okay, I'm gonna donate this % this month or this % this year, whatever it may be. Just personally donating, tithing, whatever it may be, because every single dollar matters in every single way. Another thing is question.
What would you recommend like the best resource if you're, whatever you're considering purchasing, like what's the best resource to actually look at that company and say, okay, well, maybe I don't want to be buying from these people, maybe I do want to be buying from these people. Because I'm guessing that if you just like Google it or whatever, you're going to get 1,000, and on the internet, everyone has a gripe against a certain company for one reason or another. So what do you recommend as an actual productive resource to look into some of this stuff?
Right. So for like these bigger companies, like I mentioned, like Zara, H&M, Nike, it's pretty surprisingly easy to find like corruption and kind of their unethical business practices. So for these larger companies, Google search might just yield the results that you want. But specifically for like nonprofit organizations, that is definitely difficult. Not everyone can go to Nepal and like personally vet companies. But I would definitely recommend talking with, or just hearing kind of word of mouth, first of all, hearing what other people are saying about the organizations, find people who you trust. Also looking at organizations' overhead rate is really, really effective to vetting kind of where they're using their money. I know that Love Justice, this was a couple years ago, so it might have changed, but they have a 3% overhead rate, which is absolutely insane. That's unheard of. And so the money that you're donating to them is being used to fight or to like affect change in the way you want it to. Another thing a lot of these organizations have people that you can talk to. So I would definitely recommend talking to anyone who you can from the organization. Yeah, for sure.
Also along that, much like their organization, Love Justice, they know other partnering companies that are on the same, value system and all of that as them. So even reaching out to them, being like, do you know any other organizations who are aligned with those is probably super helpful. On that note, though, it reminded me, some of the big box stores, like Nordstrom, last year announced they have an online used Nordstrom's rack now. And so they're starting to tie into that for whatever reason. I don't know if it's a trending thing where they're thinking, hey, we need to get on that. But for me, I'm like, maybe they're realizing that, it's going to help our planet. But there are big box stores that are now starting to do that. And there's another one I can't remember where if you bring in your jeans from them or something like that, they will give you credit. And then they have, some kind of department where they're reselling these pre-loved items too, which is huge. So I'm hoping, that'll catch on like wildfire is the hope.
Have you guys heard of Hive website? That's one that really focuses on sustainability and doing Hive. Yeah. What's it called? Hive. Hive.
There's also a website. I was like, am I just making this up? But no. There's the website called slaveryfootprint.org, and it can track the types of items you're buying and like how likely that is that it is that the products you purchase have been produced in unethical ways. So that's also a great resource.
Well, it's hard to challenge. I would want to find out when a good percentage of everything now is made in China. You can't investigate anything about China. And so since we push so much overseas, like I said, it is important, of course. It isn't cheap. It isn't slave labor. I've watched 2 documentaries showing how all the clothes that we waste here in this country goes to dumps. They're not even there. They're in the third world countries, they're like mountains, and the people are just walking through trying to find clothes because they don't have clothes. All the stuff that we dump.
And I think specifically you bring up a really good point about China. So I'm sure you guys have all heard about the Uyghurs and like the slave labor that the Chinese government is using to produce cotton in, I'm going to butcher the name, the Xinjiang. My brother speaks Mandarin, I do not. Actually, if you look at the companies who purchase cotton from that region, they've actually, like H&M has committed to stop buying cotton from cotton that was produced by the Uyghurs. And so it really, and they did that not because they like wanted to. It's not because H&M is like an ethical company by any means, but they did that because of consumer pressure. So it really does show, like, as consumers, we can consciously choose to not buy products that are made in ethical and unsustainable ways. And like that can, obviously, like one person not buying product is not gonna create this national movement, but collectively, it really does have such an impact on businesses' decisions to produce things ethically and sustainably.
And in addition to your question, I cannot remember. I tried looking it up, but then it wouldn't load. There are certain websites that you can go onto. I think one of them is Charity Watch, I believe, and it lists out all of like the, like Allison was saying, like overheads of certain companies, different avenues that they are putting money towards, and just so then you get a more well-rounded view of the business of the company that you may want to donate to, of the organization, and it does help very, very much in understanding, like, okay, so this is where they're diverting money to. That seems a little bit sketchy, and then talking to one of their people about it. So, Yes. Okay. Next, forgive. This one is specifically for business owners. So all of us here are business owners, and there are two different types of businesses, as you have seen, that we have. So there is a nonprofit, Prem-maa International, and they divert 100% of the profits to fighting human trafficking. Little Red Door and Love and Day Clay, we divert a percentage of profit from our already existing businesses that don't really have anything to do with human trafficking outside of the fact that we donate. So those are two different ways that social entrepreneurship can help, is by using your already made business to donate and affect lives without having to go through this crazy hassle or this crazy ordeal of like, I want to start a business to do all of these amazing things. You go do that. Have fun at it. I will support you. Way to go. However, if you don't have time, money, etc. to start a business or the inclination, then using what you already have as a platform for that social change is really, really important.
And then the final thing is just tell others. So obviously we are all businesses. Like we said, we depend on sales to continue our work, whether that's in a nonprofit setting or a for-profit setting. So telling others about like word of mouth, like super helpful. If anyone wants to host a product party, Prem-maa would love that, because COVID is becoming more endemic now. So we are hoping to kind of restart our product party kind of sector of our business. So telling others about like the Little Red Door, about Love and Day, about Prem-maa really does go a long way in fighting human trafficking, as we're all working collectively to stop the industry. So I think that's all we have. Are we like out of time? Oh, I'm so sorry, guys. Well, if you have any questions, we'll be around always. So yeah, you can ask them now, or like feel free to leave if you want.
Also, Prem-maa has a booth in there with tons of products. You can go and support that way, or you can just go and talk to us and ask us questions, and like we're totally down for that.
Good question. So Little Red Door is located in downtown Turlock, right next to La Mo, and then we have a smaller location in Santa Cruz off Portola as well, which is called Little Red Door Home, that my sister runs. Thank you guys so much for your time. We hope you have a great rest of your day.